You got more dye in that beard than Diddy wears.
All right, that's enough.
I know.
That's enough.
But I seen him. He shows me behind the curtain.
That's enough. All right, I'm gonna edit. I'm gonna edit this out.
But still,
Put
a note on it. You can edit that one.
He built an empire from the ground up, turning street hustle into global fame, launching artists into the stratosphere, and redefining what it meant to be a music mogul. But now, everything that once made Sean Diddy Combs untouchable is at the center of a firestorm, threatening to erase his legacy in real time. The man behind Bad Boy Records, once celebrated for his charisma and business genius, is now standing trial in one of the most explosive cases Hollywood has seen in decades. It's not just about music anymore. Federal prosecutors say what happened behind the scenes paints a much darker picture, one involving coercion, manipulation, and a network of power allegedly used to silence victims and protect an empire. Raids on luxury homes, dozens of lawsuits, insiders flipping under pressure, and industry giants racing to cut ties all point to something massive unraveling. And while Diddy maintains his innocence, the allegations are so serious that even his most loyal allies are keeping their distance. Is this the fall of a cultural icon, or a high-stakes takedown built on spectacle and assumptions?
We have the latest from federal court in the Sean Combs criminal case. Status of jury selection, what Diddy's going to be wearing, violation of a gag order, rejecting a plea offer.
The courtroom is ready, the cameras are rolling, and the world is watching. This isn't just another celebrity scandal. This is a test of justice, influence, and whether decades of alleged misconduct can finally catch up to someone who always seemed 5 steps ahead. But as the first day of trial looms closer, one thing is clear: no one, no matter how powerful, is immune from the truth when the spotlight flips directions. Before the headlines, before the courtroom, before the whispers and accusations, there was the rise. Sean Diddy Combs didn't just climb the music industry ladder, he shattered it and built his own. Coming out of Harlem with nothing but ambition and an unmatched instinct for influence, he transformed himself from a young intern at Uptown Records into one of the most powerful forces in hip-hop history. In the 1990s, Bad Boy Records became a cultural movement, launching legends like the Notorious Big and reshaping the sound of an entire generation. But Diddy didn't stop at music. He built brands, created fashion lines, starred in movies, and even launched his own TV network.
This is going to be such a massive trial, like maybe the biggest Hollywood trial. God knows which way it's going to go. Are they gonna? Is it gonna go on for weeks and?
Oh, for sure, weeks.
His name became synonymous with success, luxury, and reinvention. For decades, he seemed to embody the American dream, a black entrepreneur who turned charisma and hustle into billion-dollar moves. He wasn't just in the room; he was the room. White parties in the Hamptons, international tours, Ciroc billboards on every corner. Diddy turned lifestyle into legacy. But what the world saw was carefully curated. Behind the velvet ropes and magazine covers, few questioned what it took to keep the empire running. His charm disarmed critics, and his business savvy kept him ahead of competitors. By the 2000s, he wasn't just an artist or a businessman. He was a brand, an image, an untouchable icon. And yet, as the fame grew, so did the silence around the rumors that occasionally slipped through the cracks. Whispers of control, manipulation, power plays behind closed doors. Most dismissed them. After all, Diddy was too big to fail, too smart, too rich, too protected. But now, with the full weight of the federal government bearing down on him, the very foundation he built his kingdom on is being pulled apart brick by brick. Because when someone rises this high, the fall isn't just personal. It becomes a public spectacle, and everyone's watching to see how far he has to drop before he hits the ground. It was a quiet morning in Los Angeles when federal agents descended on Diddy's lavish mansion, the kind of estate that screams invincibility from the outside. Gates high, curtains drawn, everything manicured to perfection. But no amount of luxury could mask what authorities were after.
The decision guarantees Combs will face trial beginning just 4 days from now that will test whether one of music's most prolific figures used his power, wealth, and fame to exploit both women and men for decades.
At the exact same time, across the country in Miami, a second team of agents executed a coordinated raid on another one of his properties. It wasn't just a show of force, it was a message. No more delays, no more behind-the-scenes maneuvering. The investigations had gone from rumor to reality. Inside, agents reportedly seized dozens of electronic devices, phones, hard drives, laptops, all said to contain years of digital footprints that prosecutors claim linked Diddy to a long-running operation far beyond what the the public had imagined. And just like that, the media narrative flipped. Diddy wasn't trending for a new single or a business deal. He was trending for criminal charges tied to trafficking, racketeering, and coercion. News helicopters swarmed above his properties, social media lit up with speculation, and the empire he'd spent decades building suddenly looked vulnerable. What shocked many wasn't just the raids themselves, but the scope of what prosecutors believed was hidden behind the music. A web of control, silencing tactics, and high-profile manipulation spanning years. The press dug deeper, uncovering lawsuits that had previously flown under the radar, allegations stretching back decades from women and men who claimed they were exploited under the guise of glamour and success. Some insiders said they weren't surprised, claiming the signs were always there if you looked close enough. But others, including longtime collaborators, went silent, unsure how to react as the man who once defined success for a generation was now being led into custody in a baggy beige jumpsuit.
What happens is if people go into a trial believing the firepower on the prosecution is so strong, I mean, let's say on a scale of 1 to 100, it's a 95 that it's so strong, but it goes down to an 88. That helps the defense because everybody goes in thinking, wow, they're going to prove this, and they're going to prove this, and they're going to prove this, and all of a sudden, none of it's there. I think that actually helps the defense.
It was more than just a celebrity story. It felt like the unmasking of a giant. The homes that once symbolized wealth and freedom now symbolized exposure. And for Diddy, the clock had officially started ticking toward a reckoning he'd never faced before. The full weight of the case didn't land with the raids. It hit when the documents dropped. Page after page, sealed indictments and civil complaints painted a disturbing picture that shook the industry to its core. Federal prosecutors alleged that behind the glitz, behind the endorsements and Grammys, Sean Diddy Combs orchestrated a years-long enterprise built on manipulation, intimidation, and exploitation. The charges weren't vague, they were detailed, specific, and overwhelming in volume. Over 70 civil lawsuits filed by alleged victims began to resurface, some dating back nearly 3 decades, all echoing eerily similar patterns. Lavish parties that turned dark, coercive behavior masked as consent, drugs allegedly used to control and confuse, and a revolving door of silence enforced through fear or payouts. Prosecutors claimed Diddy didn't act alone, that he employed a network of associates to help coordinate, cover up, and keep the machine running. These weren't just allegations of bad behavior. They were accusations of serious federal crimes involving SA, ST, and financial fraud, with evidence allegedly including video footage, digital messages, and corroborating witness statements. The media dubbed it hip-hop's Epstein moment.
What made you come here to support Puff?
I'm supporting Puff because he's innocent, and I'm wholeheartedly believing his innocence, and I know he's innocent. So
you say you know he's innocent?
1,000%.
And whether fair or not, the public began to draw parallels. Suddenly, Diddy was no longer a music mogul under pressure. He was a central figure in what some believed could become one of the most high-profile federal trials in entertainment history. His legal team pushed back hard, calling the claims exaggerated, opportunistic, and built on inconsistent testimonies. But even as he denied every charge, the sheer number of accusations and the chilling similarities across them made it impossible for the public to look away. This wasn't just one person's word against his, it was a wave of voices, growing louder, with receipts to back them up. For fans who had idolized him, the cognitive dissonance was heavy. Could the same man who gave them I'll Be Missing You and built careers for countless artists also be capable of what these court filings described? And if so, how did it go unchecked for so long? The courtroom hadn't even opened yet, but in the court of public opinion, the trial had already begun, and the allegations were nothing short of nuclear. As the federal case gained traction, the most chilling shift wasn't in the headlines. It was in the silence that started creeping in from Diddy's inner circle. People who had once stood beside him on red carpets, toasted to his success in penthouse suites, and benefited directly from his empire, began stepping away, or in some cases, flipping entirely. The first major blow came when Harve Pierre, a former bad boy executive with decades of close ties to Diddy, agreed to cooperate with prosecutors. According to court filings, Pierre provided what was described as substantial contemporaneous records, code for receipts, documenting financial transfers, event logistics, and other behind-the-scenes movements that lined up with some of the most damaging accusations.
He knows the deck is stacked against him. They've got a ton of evidence. Take the plea deal, dude. Just take it.
Well, My guess is that because we don't know the deal of the plea deal. At least I don't think we do.
True.
Okay.
But it didn't stop there. Crystal Flores, once a tour accountant trusted with the mogul's financial operations, handed over ledgers allegedly detailing massive off-book payments and suspicious cash distributions routed through shell companies and charter flights. Her signed declaration, citing first-hand observations of routine untraceable advances, was the kind of insider testimony that changes the shape of a trial. These weren't random accusations from distant accusers. These were people who'd been in the room, in the meetings, on the payroll. The quiet unraveling of loyalty sent shockwaves through the industry. Insiders whispered about more sealed deals, hush-hush proffer letters, and the possibility that other former confidants were negotiating their own cooperation to avoid getting swept up in a case that prosecutors seemed determined to expand. Diddy's legal team dismissed these shifts as betrayals by disgruntled employees and turncoats looking to save themselves, but the damage was already done. For a man whose brand had always depended on loyalty, bad boy for life, ride or die, the sight of key allies backing away or actively helping the government painted a damning picture. The optics alone were brutal. People close enough to know everything now saying he went too far and that the world deserved to know what they saw. And once that dam started cracking, it became clear Diddy wasn't just facing a trial in court, he was facing the disintegration of the fortress he'd spent decades building from the inside out.
Well, Bill and Sade, accepting a plea agreement would mean that Sean Combs would have to admit to trafficking and force. And today he made it very clear that was not going to happen. Diddy maintained all along these encounters involved consenting adults and plans to take his chances that a jury agrees.
When the story first broke, some in the industry hesitated, waiting to see if it would all blow over, but it didn't. The deeper the allegations against Diddy got, the faster the entertainment world began to pull back, like a ripple effect spreading from the epicenter of a scandal too big to ignore. What started as quiet unfollows on social media turned into something more public, more deliberate. Mark Wahlberg, normally reserved when it comes to industry drama, took the unusual step of warning fellow entertainers to steer clear of the courthouse, saying the trial had turned into a media storm that could ruin reputations by mere association. His words weren't just personal opinion, they were a warning shot to a nervous industry. Within days, photos with Diddy began disappearing from the Instagram feeds of artists who once proudly collaborated with him. Faith Evans, a longtime musical partner and once a staple of the Bad Boy brand, subtly distanced herself with a cryptic post about uplifting music and no mention of Diddy at all. Spotify and Apple Music made quiet but pointed moves, removing Diddy's curated playlists from prime spots, placing content warnings on compilation albums, recalibrating their positioning without ever issuing formal statements. Two major talent agencies confirmed that artists were withdrawing from summer tours to avoid the risk of public backlash linked to any Diddy-affiliated projects. Event organizers and fashion houses were next. Live Nation reportedly inserted morality clauses in artist contracts, and a French luxury label abruptly paused negotiations over a vodka campaign Diddy had helped make iconic. Suddenly, every company, brand, and collaborator was reevaluating their ties, not just because of what Diddy was accused of, but because of what it would look like to stand beside him when testimony began. Even Revolt, the media company he co-founded, faced investor hesitation as funding talks cooled and internal memos warned of valuation drop.
The last hearing before Sean Combs' trial starts, when he walked into federal court today, he appeared to be looking for his family. They've pretty much been at all of the hearings that I've been to, but there was no presence of his sons or his mother or his sister who had previously been at those hearings.
In an industry where perception is everything, silence became strategy and disassociation became survival. Diddy, once the ultimate connector, was now radioactive, and the people who once praised his genius were either ghosting him entirely or pretending they were never that close to begin with. Loyalty, it seemed, had an expiration date, and in Hollywood, it expired the moment the brand became a liability. As the trial date loomed, Sean Diddy Combs made a move that stunned even some of his supporters. He rejected a plea deal. In a soft but deliberate voice, wearing a baggy beige jail uniform, he stood before the judge and confirmed what many had speculated. He was choosing to fight this in open court, no matter the risk. The prosecution had reportedly offered a deal that would have reduced his sentence significantly, but it came with a catch, admitting guilt, including to trafficking and coercive conduct. For Diddy, that wasn't an option. He has maintained maintained from the start that all his interactions were between consenting adults, and to accept such a plea, in his words, would be a betrayal of his truth. But with that decision came an enormous gamble. The defense strategy became clear. Frame this as a smear campaign, orchestrated by a mix of opportunists and overreaching federal agents. His legal team, led by veteran litigator Benjamin Braffman, began aggressively attacking the government's evidence, filing motions to suppress digital data seized during the raids and arguing that the warrants were overly broad and unconstitutional. They claimed that the feds were dragging unrelated accusations into the spotlight to poison the jury pool, packaging gossip and civil claims into a criminal case that lacked solid proof. At the same time, Diddy's attorneys pushed for a change of venue, citing a media frenzy in Los Angeles that they argued made a fair trial impossible. They challenged the credibility of witnesses like Harve Pierre and Crystal Flores, calling them bitter former associates with motives rooted in self-preservation. Yet, behind closed doors, even his team couldn't ignore the scope of what they were up against. Decades of lawsuits, sealed testimonies, digital trails, and a growing list of people willing to testify. Still, Diddy's decision to stand firm wasn't just legal, it was symbolic. He's not just trying to win in court, he's trying to protect his identity, his brand, and his legacy. To take the plea would be to admit he built his empire on pain and manipulation. To fight, however, means putting it all on the line.
Back up a little bit, please.
How can you support your father? How do you support him moving forward?
Because if the jury isn't convinced, he's not just facing a public fall from grace. He could be staring down a sentence that lasts the rest of his life. The courtroom battle may be just beginning, but the fallout from this case is already seismic, with the stakes stretching far beyond Sean Diddy Combs himself. If convicted on the most serious charges, including federal trafficking and racketeering counts, he could be facing decades behind bars, possibly even a life sentence under current federal guidelines. But it's not just his freedom on the line, it's his entire legacy, every brand he ever touched, and the credibility of an industry that allowed him to thrive unchecked for years. Prosecutors claim his alleged enterprise moved illicit money, used shell companies to funnel payments, and hosted elaborate parties where consent was blurred by drugs, power, and manipulation. They say this wasn't a few isolated incidents, it was a system. And if a jury agrees, it sets a legal precedent that could trigger a wave of accountability across the entertainment world. Already, corporate sponsors are pulling back, talent agencies are rewriting contracts, music festivals are scrubbing his name from their archives, streaming platforms are dialing down exposure. These aren't just reactions, they're preemptive damage control, because everyone understands what conviction would mean. And then there's the ripple effect, schools and nonprofits tied to Diddy's philanthropy reassessing their funding structures, lawmakers considering new compliance rules for artist-run companies, even venture capital firms freezing investments linked to him. If more insiders come forward, and several already have, the witness list could double in size, pushing prosecutors to widen the case and potentially rope in others who were complicit or silent. It's no longer about one man's guilt or innocence. This has evolved into a full-blown cultural reckoning, a moment where power, privilege, and protection in entertainment are being dragged into the light.
Trial, Combs will ditch the jail garb and wear ordinary clothes. As his lawyers argue, the evidence shows consenting adults being intimate in their own way.
And yet, nothing is certain. Diddy still has a loyal core of defenders, and his legal team believes they can dismantle the narrative piece by piece. But if that fails, if even one major charge sticks, the result won't just be a conviction, it'll be a message to an entire generation of artists, executives, and gatekeepers. The old rules of silence and protection are over, and no amount of fame can shield you when the machine turns against you. What's unfolding in that federal courtroom isn't just the dismantling of one man's reputation, it's the cross-examination of an entire era. Diddy isn't just on trial for what prosecutors say he did behind closed doors. In many ways, the values of a whole entertainment culture are being interrogated alongside him. For decades, the music industry, especially the hip-hop world, has existed in a complicated space where power, image, and loyalty often overshadowed accountability. The lifestyle that Diddy helped sell to the world, limitless success, untouchable status, money as power now looks eerily similar to the foundation of the allegations he's facing. It's forcing uncomfortable questions. How many people knew? How many stayed quiet because the checks were good? How many benefited from proximity to power while turning a blind eye to how that power was used? Diddy's case has become more than just a legal battle. It's a flashpoint that could redefine how the public views fame, masculinity, and control in celebrity spaces. The same industry that once celebrated his every move is now split, some remaining silent out of fear, others using this moment to distance themselves and reassess their own roles in maintaining the status quo. What's even more striking is how this trial has reached beyond music.
Isn't that, to my mind, that's one of the bigger hurdles in selecting a jury this coming week, is that there is, at least anecdotally, when I talk to people, they have that opinion, strongly held opinion, that there's celebrity tapes, that they've kind of conflated Epstein, and you mentioned Ghislaine Maxwell and all of these things, into Diddy. There's this idea that somehow this is Epstein redux or something.
Politicians are calling for new regulations. Streaming services are shifting algorithms. Corporate boards are reviewing brand affiliations. And fans, many of whom grew up idolizing Diddy, are left questioning whether the soundtrack of their lives was built on a foundation of exploitation. In a way, this case is holding a mirror up to the entire system, asking whether it can evolve or if it's too corrupted to be saved. Because even if Diddy walks free, the questions won't go away. The voices raised during this scandal won't be silenced again. And the old Hollywood playbook of denial, payout, and PR spin may not work in a world where receipts are digital, witnesses are emboldened, and justice is no longer just a headline. It's a demand. Whether Diddy is found guilty or not, this trial marks the end of something bigger. The illusion that fame grants immunity. The culture is watching, and this time, it's not just taking notes, it's taking names. In the end, this isn't just the story of Sean Diddy Combs. It's the story of how power protects, how influence blinds, and how the walls eventually close in, no matter how high you build them. The man once celebrated as a genius of reinvention, a symbol of black excellence, and the architect of an empire, is now the central figure in a trial that could redefine how justice intersects with fame. His fall isn't happening in private, it's unfolding in courtrooms, newsrooms, and living rooms across the world. And while Diddy insists he's innocent, standing tall against the full force of the federal government, the case has already left its mark. His name no longer means just music, fashion, and moguldom. It now carries the weight of accusations, silence, and shattered trust. But beyond the verdict lies something even more important: the shift in culture. Fans aren't just asking what Diddy did, they're asking how many others have done the same and gotten away with it. Executives are being forced to reconsider who they champion, and young artists are learning that unchecked power can have consequences even years later. This trial may end in a conviction, an acquittal, or a settlement, but its impact will ripple far beyond that. It's already changing how stories are told, how brands are built, and how audiences respond when idols fall. Because when you strip away the fame, the bodyguards, the press releases, what's left is the truth, and no PR strategy can bury it forever. Whether Diddy is found guilty or walks out of court a free man, the culture has already shifted. The spotlight he once controlled is now fixed on every move he makes, and the world is watching, not to celebrate, but to hold accountable. So as the final arguments are prepared and the jury takes their seats, we're left with one haunting question: is this where justice begins, or where it finally catches up?